I'm Terry Sacka, and this is Rigged Against You. A great policy just came out, decision came out from the Supreme Court, making gold and silver money legal tender. Now, this is going to be done through the states. Remember, we are 50 states. And so every state is really just part of the United States of America, but we do have independence. Now, where states get tied down to the federal government is because of money that the federal government gives them. And so states are kind of beholden to listen to what the feds say. But at the end of the day, each state really has control over their affairs, which is fantastic. So the Supreme Court has come out and said that each state can now make gold and silver legal tender. So look at this. Apparently, the U.S. Supreme Court has just given 40 U.S. states the green light to begin issuing their own gold and silver backed currencies. This is absolutely huge because remember, our dollar is not backed by gold and silver anymore. Constitutionally, Article 1, Section 8 says our money was grains of silver, grains of gold. And then somehow through different laws, they were able to redefine to some extent what money means. And then we came up with these currency notes because gold and silver was heavy. So they had these gold notes, silver dollars. Many of you remember silver dollars. I actually have one right here behind me on the wall. But the currencies were created to kind of fool people into, well, let's just use the paper because the gold and silver is too heavy. And then they changed it. They changed it in 71 when Nixon said, we're coming off the gold standard temporarily, which was a total lie. They knew they were doing this permanently because the world found out that the United States had actually started printing more currency notes, more dollars than they had gold backing up those dollars. And so countries were like, wait a minute, this isn't good. We want our gold back. And they started demanding the return of their gold. And that's when Nixon took us off the standard. And then we have what we have now in our wallets, the Federal Reserve note. And if you notice that word note, that is an actual IOU. That is a debt instrument. So what we're holding now isn't really money. It's a contract debt instrument to the central bank. Because remember, the banks of the central bank that are part of this cabal all get a set interest rate on that debt. So it was a total rigged system, but gold and silver now being made back to the original standard of constitutional money, the Supreme Court doing it. It is absolutely fantastic for we the people. Now, what is this going to mean? Let's do it this way. The Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court upheld that the state's right to maintain its own charter and allow state banks to issue gold-backed currency, bypassing the Federal Reserve's corporate system. The ruling was released on May 30th here of 2024 and marks a significant step towards decentralization in the banking sector. Decentralizing, interesting, isn't it? We have powers, it seems, in the world and the United States that are working against each other. If you notice some of the past programs, we have the BIS, which controls all the world fiat currencies. They are the central bank of central banks. The Federal Reserve is not government, even though they have the word federal in there. It's just there to fool us. It literally is a private incorporated bank. And they are giving us loans. That's why Federal Reserve note. Well, the Supreme Court has said now states can issue through state banks their own gold and silver backed currencies, which of course will have no taxation attached, which they shouldn't even be taxing now. Right now, gold and silver is taxed as a capital asset. So when you profit, you have to claim that profit, but it's money. And so now that they're declaring it can be made legal tender, there's no such thing as tax on money. So this is a really unbelievable development for we the people. They're willing to go to this level to protect us. I love where we're going. Now, what this means is a dual banking system will exist. Each state in the United States operates its own banking system, parallel to the Federal Reserve. State-sponsored banks now have the option to acquire gold reserves and disband from the Federal Reserve System. This effectively establishes a dual banking system where state banks can operate independently of the corporate federal system. This is such a win for we the people, so we can stop the tyranny that is coming out of the centralized system in Washington, where now we, the states, can start dictating what we, the people in our state, can do. This is a huge, huge discovery, and one that also backs up the fact that gold and silver is going to be very expensive in the future. I'd be going to Cornerstone Asset Metals to get your gold and silver, stash it away, put it in your IRA, because the values of gold and silver going up are going to just empower the people, bring wealth to the people away from the inflation that the federal government, the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury have done by printing so many dollars into circulation, causing inflation. And wait until you see the inflation that's coming. What's happening is, in the last program we talked about it, about is there a Great Depression coming? Gold and silver is going to protect against that. The Great Depression shows how this is being done and how the printing of the money, how they put it in and take it out of the system, causes tremendous problems for us, we the people, small businesses. But now that the Supreme Court has opened the door for a dual banking system, wow. So what are the implications of this? States that choose to issue gold and silver-backed currencies can potentially reduce the reliance on the Federal Reserve. It also opens the door for alternative forms of currency within the individual states. Now, that could even open the door for crypto. But we do know states are already doing it. There are a handful that started to do it. Matter of fact, there's a handful already passing laws like Tennessee, where they're not even going to tax gold and silver anymore. Then you get the radical states like Minnesota that tax everything. And so we're seeing a divide between those that are free people, red states, and those in the blue states that want to go more towards the Marxist collective centralization of government. But the Supreme Court just opened the door to make our constitutional money truly legal tender. Now, why is this important? Is because the inflation, the amount of printed currency that they're doing, and I talk about it a lot, how inflation numbers are completely rigged. And gold and silver is what protects you from that inflation, regardless of what the price is doing. They're doing, well, put it this way, they're trying anyway to do a good job of keeping the price down. But the fact is, the East and the BRICS are controlling this, and the real physical supply is starting to dictate, and you're going to see explosive exponential price increases in gold and silver because it will help offset debts and empower not just the people, but the states with wealth that has true money, which money is a storage of value over time. Currencies always go to zero. All fiat currencies not only go to zero, but they all go away. We're in a fiat currency state right now, and we're seeing an epic time in history. I call this fourth turning that is coming unbelievable. But I know I mentioned inflation, and inflation is extremely real. And I always said I would show the chart, but here it is. Now, this comes out of Shadow Stats. These are government statistics. This type of chart or this measurement is how inflation truly was measured in the 80s. That's when everything was put in and it was honest. And here is the true inflation today. Consumer inflation, the blue is the alternative to 1990. The official is the red. What they're trying to show you is our inflation is only 4% in the red. But as you can see, now this is 1990s, mind you. I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is not the 80s. This is when they changed the matrix to 1990. Look at how they started manipulating this already. So even using the 1990s matrix, you can see on the right where we're still at almost 8% inflation. And the official is at 4%. Now, that is the 1990s. So in 1980 is when we were honest about it. 1990, they started realizing, hey, we're in trouble. We better start rigging the system because the inflation, we can't afford it. We can't afford it with COLA, cost of living adjustments to Social Security. We can't afford it because of the bonds. We need to show that inflation is not nearly as high. So what I just showed you was 1990, how they used to measure. And even then, off those measurements, we're still at 8%. Well, here is the truest inflation marker. When we were honest back in 1980, right here, the blue line is the true 1980 base alternate CPI, Consumer Price Index. And as you can see, we're still up 12 to 14% right now on inflation. And you can see in the red, this is what they're trying to tell you inflation is, and it's up 4 to 3%. It's a total lie. It's rigged. Real inflation is 12%. I'm going to keep showing that chart because you cannot get around the fact that the government had learned to start rigging and manipulating the numbers. And by doing so, they can control how much they have to do on the welfare and entitlement programs and how they base also the bonds and the interest rates. So this is a really big deal. The U.S. Supreme Court has now made gold and silver legal tender for each state to make their own choice and separate from the Federal Reserve corrupt system that has been causing us tremendous harm in our businesses and our lives through inflation. This is such wonderful news. I thought I'd get it out there. So until next time, God bless you.
With all of the recent changes in the political and financial markets, there has never been a better time than right now to invest in silver and gold. When governments simply print billions of dollars in paper money in hopes of solving financial shortfalls, you know that it is time to buy and hold assets of true and lasting value. Free information is available to you right now by calling 888-747-3309. Whether you are a new investor or you're interested in preserving the value of your retirement accounts, we make it easy for you to make smart decisions for your financial future. The specialists at Cornerstone are here to serve you, work to satisfy your retirement goals, and communicate with respect. Call us right now at 888-747-3309. That's 888-747-3309. Or visit us online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com. That's cornerstoneassetmetals.com.